This is the North Carolina Gubernatorial Candidates Debate. This program is sponsored as a public service to the citizens of this state by the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters Educational Foundation. Here's our moderator, Chuck Todd.
Good evening. I am Chuck Todd of NBC News, and welcome to the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters Educational Foundation Gubernatorial Candidates Debate between the Governor of North Carolina, Republican Pat McCrory, and the Attorney General of North Carolina, Democrat Roy Cooper. We should note that this debate is happening at a difficult time. Hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians are without power, and flooding still remains a threat for so many. Some of you are having to listen on the radio or streaming this debate because of no power, so we want to thank you and thank both candidates and the viewers, and we hope that things return to normal as soon as possible. Let me begin by quickly covering the rules of tonight's debate. It will last an hour, and we'll begin with 1-minute opening statements from each candidate, and then I will pose questions directly to the candidates. I should note these questions have been determined by me and by members of the Radio, Television, Digital News Association of the Carolinas and have not been reviewed by the candidates or their staffs. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond and a 30-second rebuttal. As moderator, I do reserve the right to follow up as needed. And finally, we will conclude the debate with 90-second closing statements. There is a device that will notify candidates of their remaining time and when time has expired. In the interest of trying to cover as much ground as possible, we ask the candidates to adhere to these time limits so that we don't have to become time cops. And now let's welcome officially the candidates for governor, the current governor of North Carolina, Republican Pat McCrory, and the Attorney General of North Carolina, Democrat Roy Cooper. Let's give them a round of applause. I want folks to know there is a live audience, and hopefully that's as much as they participate in this debate. Mr. McCrory, by virtue of the coin toss, you will go first with your 1-minute opening statement. You also received the first question, so Mr. McCrory, go ahead.
Well, Chuck, first, welcome to North Carolina, and this is a very difficult time for our state. Sadly, I had to announce about 2 hours ago at the emergency center that we've now lost 17 people in these recent floods, and our hearts and prayers are with those families. And I'm also extremely proud of our team, our National Guard. I'm proud of the President for working with us. I'm very proud of our emergency operations team and all of the state and local officials. I do want to make an announcement that, however, if you're in Moore County and you live below Wood Lake Dam, we need to clarify the announcement that if you live below that dam, you need to evacuate that area immediately because the engineers have not certified the strength of that dam based upon some work today. And I need to make that point very, very strong. If you're one of the 60 holdouts, leave. Do not put yourself at risk and do not put our emergency operations people at risk. This is not the first crisis I've had to deal with as governor. I've had to deal with many natural crises, but I've also had to deal with man-made crises. And those were crises that I came into just 3.5 to 4 years ago. And we dealt with those crises and we solved them. We're a problem solver, and we're going to continue that during the next 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. McCrory. Mr. Cooper.
Our hearts and our thoughts and our prayer go out to the victims of flooding tonight. And over the next few weeks and months, we got to do everything that we can to help them. But tonight we're going to be talking about our future. And for the last 4 years, Governor McCrory has taken our state backward. And throughout this campaign, he hadn't been honest with you about his record. He has failed to make education a priority. That's why we're 41st in teacher pay. And he signed House Bill 2, writing discrimination into our law, and with the stroke of a pen, damaged North Carolina's brand, costing us thousands of jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars. We're on pace to have twice as many layoffs this year as last year, and so many people in the middle class are asking when they're going to see the gains of a growing economy. We need a good jobs governor, not a House Bill 2 governor. Good jobs and schools are my priority, and I'm going to work to make sure we spread the word across this country that North Carolina is open for business for everyone.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cooper. Mr. Corey, the first question, we're going to start with HB 2. As you know, since its passage, businesses have canceled plans to expand in the state. NBA, ACC, NCAA have all moved events from here. Duke basketball coach Mike Krzyzewski has even called the law embarrassing. Majority of voters, even ones who support it, believe it's hurt the state's reputation. How do you fix the state's reputation without repealing the law?
Let's first state the facts. The thing that's embarrassing is that a very liberal mayor of Charlotte, with very strong support from our very liberal attorney general, started this whole bathroom mess. It's one of the biggest fibs in our national press and frankly our state press, in which they say the bathrooms laws were made by Republicans. We had never brought this issue up. It was the mayor of Charlotte, with strong support from the attorney general, who decided to put a mandate on the entire private sector who had public facilities and say, we're going to fine you unless you recognize a brand new concept of gender identity and gender expression, a major change in culture in not just North Carolina, but our country. It wasn't needed. It wasn't called for. It was the liberals who brought this issue up. But as governor, I will say this. I don't care if you're in the private sector what your bathroom, locker room, or shower rules should be. That's none of our business, and it continues to be none of the business of North Carolina. But if you're in our schools, including Rocky Mount High School, where Roy's running commercials from, if you're a man, you're going to go to the man's locker room, restroom, or shower. If you're a woman, you're going to go to their appropriate shower.
All right.
No change whatsoever.
Thank you, Mr. McCrory. Mr. Cooper.
House Bill 2 has to be repealed. It writes discrimination into our law, and it has been a disaster for our economy. PayPal, hundreds of jobs. Asheville, hundreds of jobs. The ACC, the NCAA. This legislation was passed in one day and signed in the middle of the night. And Governor McCrory continues to go across the state telling people that this is not hurting our economy. He attacks businesses who are opposed to it and says that everything is going fine. Governor, what planet are you on? We have to pull the business community together. We have to get this law repealed. We got to quit blaming it on other people, blaming it on me, blaming it on the president, blaming it on Charlotte. What we have to do is to repeal House Bill 2 now.
If you notice, the Attorney General does not refute the claim that he and Jennifer Roberts started this mess. It's been a swindle of things, and it has embarrassed North Carolina. And the fact of the matter is, if they just leave this new definition of gender expression and gender identity, which changes the whole definition of man and woman, boy and girl, and our privacy rights, if we're not going to have leaders stand up for the basic rights of privacy in our nation, in our state, in our city, ahead of money, then we're losing strong national leadership.
You got 30 seconds.
I'm glad that Governor McCrory has admitted that this is an embarrassment to North Carolina, because it is. We had investors come in to tell us they control $2 trillion worth of assets, and they came in and told us that this is essentially state government inflicted recession. Governor McCrory attacked them, and then 3 days later in Wilmington, to a speech to the Chamber of Commerce, said that we needed to attract more capital and more investments in North Carolina.
I got a couple
standing ovation.
All right, I got a couple
standing ovation at that Wilmington Chamber of Commerce event, and I'm proud of it.
I'm going to use my moderator's discretion. I've got follows for both of you. I want you each to have 30-second responses. I'm going to give you each to 30 seconds to respond to the other. First to Mr. Cooper, you declined to defend HB 2. You are the elected, you're the chief law enforcement officer of the state. If you pick and choose laws to defend, aren't you setting an example and you're telling the citizens to pick and choose laws to follow?
I took an oath to defend the Constitution, just like Governor McCrory did. I told Governor McCrory not to sign this law. I told the legislature not to pass it because it writes discrimination into the law, and it is costing us hundreds of millions of dollars. And the governor has spent so much money and so much time, and it has hurt our brand. It's got to stop. It has to stop.
30 seconds.
He has stated that he's running a multi-million-dollar commercial right now saying he's going to stop talking about social issues. That's all he talks about, because he wants to cover up the incredible progress that we've made in this economy. We've lowered unemployment to record amounts. We've created 300,000 new jobs. We've lowered taxes. But the only issue he wants to talk about is a social issue, which means his commercial is a lie. And he's fooling the people of North Carolina. I agree with you. Let's get off the social issues. Let's get out of bathroom politics and start creating jobs in North Carolina, as we've done for the past 3 years.
And my follow to you, Mr. McCrory, as a conservative, as a Republican, as somebody that believes in limited government, you've said you didn't want Raleigh getting involved in city politics around the state. Why is it okay for Raleigh to get involved in Charlotte's politics?
Because Charlotte shouldn't create a new mandate on business. I was mayor for 14 years. Our line of responsibility is not to create new mandates for business. And by the way, I don't think Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama should do it through the Justice Department either, which is exactly what they're doing in changing the definition of gender. And the fact of the matter is, this is going to be resolved in the Supreme Court where it should be, not in the politicians' hand. And 21 other states in the United States of America have joined me in that effort to stop government overreach into this very, very private issue.
30 seconds for you.
Governor McCrory used to trust local government. Now he doesn't. What you have here is legislation that is hurting our state and taking us backwards. And he's the one who's been all over national TV talking about House Bill 2 and talking about how important this legislation is to protect people, when we all know these are political scare tactics. This law was born in politics, and unfortunately, now people are suffering because of it, and it has to be repealed.
We do agree on that it was born in politics, and you're looking at the individual who's raised millions of dollars on starting this initiative.
Let me ask this.
Congratulations, Mr. Cooper.
Perhaps the most famous transgender person in the world is Caitlyn Jenner. What bathroom can she legally use in Charlotte? Let me get you to answer this, Mr. McCrory, and you to answer this. You to answer, Mr. McCrory, and you to answer this, Mr. Cooper.
Look, Steve, was it me first?
Yes, sir.
See, this is the problem, Chuck. We shouldn't be getting involved in these issues. And House Bill 2 is exactly what it does. It gets us involved in these issues, and we should not, because not only is it hurting our economy, but it's embarrassing our state. The governor just admitted it earlier. They didn't have to do this. They should not have done it. There are cities all over this country that have these kinds of ordinances, and you should trust local governments to make these decisions.
Not the city of Houston, not the city of Houston, not the city of Houston, where the voters rejected it by 61% of the vote, and where the most recent NCAA basketball championship was played with no objection whatsoever by you or Barack Obama or anyone else. I will say this, where she should go, in the private sector in North Carolina, she can go wherever the private sector wants her to, because we don't want to be in the private business of the private sector. If she's going to a shower facility at UNC Chapel Hill after running around the track, she's going to use the men's shower.
Okay. All right, I'm going to change subjects here. We're going to go to the economy. Mr. Cooper, you're going to get this question first. Mr. McCrory is running on a Carolina comeback. Unemployment rate has been cut in half since he took office. Income is on the rise. If voters care about just economic performance, why shouldn't voters reelect him?
Well, the governor wants to be a Carolina comeback governor. I want to be a comeback to Carolina governor. We need PayPal to come back. We need the jobs to come back. We need the NCAA to come back. You go ask everyday working people whether they have seen a Carolina comeback, and most of them will tell you they are working longer and harder and for less money than they did before the recession. And they'd be right, because wage growth is stagnant. The middle class is not seeing the gains from the growing economy. And the governor tells people that their taxes are down when many people have taxes in the middle class that are up because of him and legislative leadership. And he continues to say that House Bill 2 is not hurting our economy. That's wrong.
He just did a commercial where he's saying no more social issues. He's brought it up 4 times already. No more social issues. Let's talk about the economy. Unemployment was at a record 9.4% when I came into office. Believe me, it was a lot worse under Easley and Perdue, the 2 governors that you strongly supported for election. 12 years of extreme high taxes. We had the highest income tax and the highest corporate tax in the Southeast. Even South Carolina was beating us for jobs, Roy, under your leadership and Beverly Perdue's leadership and Easley's leadership. That was unacceptable. When I came into office, we lowered our income tax. We lowered our corporate tax and business tax. We got rid of a $2.6 billion debt that we owed to the federal government. $2.6 billion. If you had been governor, you would have borrowed another $2 billion, and we would have been $4 billion in debt, and then you would have put on another tax on the employers of North Carolina and drove unemployment up even more. This is the philosophy that you followed as a state senator. This is the philosophy that you follow with your fellow leaders and Democrats, and it's got to end.
Go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
The governor promised people a tax cut. He came through for the corporations and for those at the top. But everyday working people got tax increases. In 67 different ways, Governor McCrory has raised taxes on middle-income families. And literally, we're talking about literally, from birth to death. The next time you go to a movie or you get your car repaired or you buy school supplies at a back-to-school weekend, you look at that receipt, and the taxes are courtesy of Governor McCrory. He continues to tax the middle class. That's why the middle class is hurting.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. You get 30 seconds, Mr. McCrory.
The income tax was high 7%. Now we've reduced it to low 5%. The business and corporate tax was 6%. Now it's down to 3%. And we're recruiting businesses again. 300,000 new private sector jobs. Mr. Cooper, if you become governor, are you going to raise the income tax again? Are you going to raise the corporate tax again? Answer that question. Are you going to raise those taxes again because you were against our tax reform? Yes or no? Are you going to raise those taxes again and be less competitive with Tennessee and Virginia and the rest of the nation?
I'll let you each have 30 seconds since you're engaging. Go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
Yes?
We do not have to raise taxes in order to fix what is wrong with our economy. The problem is the middle class is hurting. Wage growth is stagnant, Governor, whether you like it or not. You, with your income tax and corporate tax cuts, you have mostly benefited those at the top. And the statistics show that you're leaving out the middle class. This is why you're having trouble being honest with your record, Governor, and we have seen it time and time again.
All right, final 30 seconds there, Mr. McCrory.
It's Mr. Cooper that's raising $500,000 at Goldman Sachs. Believe me, Goldman Sachs doesn't care about the middle class in North Carolina. It's Mr. Cooper that's going to California and San Francisco and raising millions of dollars. The people in San Francisco don't care about the middle class in North Carolina. Tell them where you're getting your money, and it's not from people who care for North Carolina and our economy.
All right, I want to move to teacher pay. Mr. McCrory, you get this question first. You said the average teacher salary next year will be over $50,000. But according to the North Carolina Public School salary schedules, a teacher with a bachelor's degree doesn't get to make $50,000 until their 25th year of teaching or until the 20th year if they have a master's degree. How can you raise teacher salaries early on so that you don't risk seeing teachers move to other states for higher paying jobs?
Chuck, that's exactly what we did. In fact, in my first year and my second year as governor, I put together a group of the best teachers in the United States of America because under Roy Cooper and Mike Easley and Beverly Perdue's leadership, they had not given beginner teacher pay raises for 5 to 7 years. 5 to 7 years, and they were stuck at $30,000 a year. It is this governor, through recommendations from teachers, Roy, who said before you give pay raises to anyone else, help those teachers with 1 to 7 years of experience. And we did just that. We've raised their pay to $35,000 a year, which is still not enough. But it's $5,000 more dollars than Beverly Perdue and Mike Easley did, with no objection from you whatsoever during all those years as Attorney General and a candidate for governor. That's progress. I'm the only one here on this stage who has a teaching degree and understands what it's like to stay in front of a class and teach kids. I know how hard it is, and I'm proud of our teachers, and this governor has shown them respect and given them pay raises that they deserve.
60 seconds, Mr. Cooper.
My mom was a public school teacher. I have seen how hard they work, and I understand the challenges that they face. Just like his record, time and time again, the governor is not being honest about these figures. They are contrived, and they do not reflect reality. The fact is, we are 41st in teacher pay and 44th in per-student expenditure. And we've got thousands of teachers leaving North Carolina for better pay and more respect. We have teacher assistants being fired. Go listen to teachers and parents and ask if Governor McCrory's changes have made a better difference in the classroom. Just listen to them and see what they say. Try to find a teacher who is making $50,000 a year. Governor, you need to be straight with people about public education. You need to get your facts straight and to represent your record correctly.
You're about as straight as another trial lawyer who became a politician in North Carolina, and that's John Edwards, because you're fooling the jury right now. And the facts, not rhetoric, say that this is the governor that did help the teachers, and there's still a lot more to do. And I'm extremely proud of not only did we help the teachers with pay, we also have $15,000 to $16,000 a year for benefits for our teachers. And we've tripled the rate of money for every school for supplies and books, something that was clearly missing under the Easley-Purdue administrations that you supported.
30 seconds, Mr. Cooper.
When I was the Senate Democratic Majority Leader, we moved teacher pay from 42nd in the country to 21st in the country in 4 years. Governor McCrory has had 4 years. It is now 41st in teacher pay. That is wrong for our state. What I will do is invest in education. I won't just talk about it and try to distort my record. I will invest in early childhood. I'll make sure that our classrooms have resources. And I'll get our teacher paid to the national average. We've done it before. We can do it again.
I'm going to stick to this topic here. I got 30-second follows. I want each of you to respond in 30 seconds. For you, Mr. McCrory, you said it's still not enough.
No.
Well, where is it? Why not do it now?
First of all, I had to rebuild the economy where we finally have a surplus. By the way, with a surplus in a rainy day fund, something just 3 weeks ago, the Attorney General recommended that our rainy day fund was too high. Our rainy day fund was too high. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a lot of rain lately. We've had a lot of rain lately, and you were just telling people we should have spent more of that money and not hold it over the side. It's responsible fiscal responsibility. And by the way, another thing that you deceived the people on, when I came into office, teacher pay was 48. We've reduced it to 41. We reduced it to 41. Okay. And by the way, next year's teacher pay with our pay raises is going to be in the low 30s in North Carolina.
Sort of a twist on it. Where do you get the money? You want to immediately give these raises. Where do you get the money?
Well, I have to respond to
Go ahead and
issue
respond.
First, because when you're talking about disaster relief, Governor McCrory took $500,000 directly out of the disaster relief fund. And you know what it's for? House Bill 2. This is about, he wanted money for lawyers for House Bill 2 and took $500,000 out of the disaster relief fund. What we do is make education a priority. The governor's priority is continued corporate tax giveaways. What we have to do is put it at the top of the list of what we want to do to make sure we get our teachers to the national average. And I could do that. I've done it before.
I'm going to get you 30 seconds to respond to this specific charge on HB2.
He just did not tell the truth. I have not spent any money on HB2 of $500. We haven't spent $1 of the disaster relief money. We were approved to by the legislature, and I made a statement, we will not spend any of that money. He knows that. He's being deceptive to the public of North Carolina. He's being deceptive to the jury. And you should know better. Having a law license to mistruth like that, to not tell the truth. It's exactly what's wrong with politics today.
The governor could have vetoed. The governor could have vetoed this legislation that took the $500,000 after the disaster relief fund.
So
but he did not.
It's still in the disaster relief fund, and by the way, it's being used for disasters, which he spoke to a group recently, just 2 weeks ago, and said we have too much money in our reserves. Wonder if I told you as families in North Carolina, don't save so much, go ahead and spend it. Don't worry about a crisis in the future. If he had been governor for the last year, we would not have a reserves to deal with this hurricane.
Thank you, Mr. McCrory. I'll give you 30 seconds on that.
Well, I grew up in eastern North Carolina, and as a state senator, I helped push through the disaster relief funds for Hurricane Floyd. And we had the foresight to make sure the surplus was there. I support a surplus. And we made sure that we helped people who had been victims of Hurricane Floyd. We're all going to have to pull together in this thing, do it again. We shouldn't be taking money out of the disaster relief fund.
All right, I'm going to move along here. Got a new question, new set of 60-second responses for both of you. Mr. McCrory, I'll start with you.
Sure.
You signed HB2 into law. You signed 2 measures restricting abortion access in the state, even after pledging at a debate 4 years ago that you weren't going to add any more restrictions to abortion. Are you surprised 4 years later that your record is being defined as a social conservative?
First of all, I need to correct you. If you consider having to have a doctor make sure that they don't do an abortion after 5 months, that's not a restriction on the individual, that's the law. And all it requires is the doctor to make sure they have a record of that. It did not impact at all the access to an abortion. And I made sure that every law that's passed it meets the constitutional standard, which Texas did not do. I might add also, though, something the Attorney General didn't do. We had 2 abortion clinics in North Carolina that were treating women so poorly. They weren't even cleaning the floor or cleaning the utensils or the tools used for an abortion, not even cleaning them in between abortions. That is so cruel, and we took care of it. But I made sure that all rules regarding abortion protected the women's health and also fit the spirit of the law. And that's exactly what we've done, and that's why there's been no challenges to our abortion laws.
60 seconds.
This is another example of Governor McCrory distorting his own record. Chuck, you're right. On a debate stage just like this one, in 2012, when he was running for governor, he promised that he would put no more restrictions on a woman's right to choose. Yet, he supports legislation that puts state government in the exam room between a woman and her doctor. Now, you talk about a restriction. His legislation requires that a doctor send a woman's ultrasound to state government. Now, how do you feel about the policy? We don't need state government bureaucrats reviewing women's ultrasounds. This is the kind of restriction that he promised that he would not put in place, that he did, and now he's coming around trying to say that's not a restriction. I think people would say that it is, Governor, and that you are distorting your record.
Why didn't
30
you?
seconds.
Why didn't you, over 14 years, 16 years as Attorney General, protect the women that were being abused in Asheville and Charlotte in these clinics? It took my Secretary of Health and Human Resources, Aldona Voss, a doctor in her own merit, to say, you know what, these women deserve a safe abortion, a constitutional abortion. And you did nothing. You stood on the sideline while these women were basically being treated not like women should be treated. And I'm proud that we took action. By the way, we reopened those facilities.
Thank you.
Because that's the law and the
Mr.
Constitution. I respect that.
30 seconds, Mr. Cooper.
This is another example of Governor McCrory putting social issues ahead of the best interests of our state, ahead of the safety of our citizens. You got House Bill 2, you got these abortion issues, you've got refusal to expand Medicaid. What he continues to do is to put these right-wing social ideological issues ahead of the best interest of our citizens. That's where he and I differ.
All right.
And
No worries. We got time. We're going to take a quick break here for a public service announcement from the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters. When we come back, we're going to have questions on policing, criminal justice reform, and maybe a little presidential politics. We'll be right back.
I like calling North Carolina home.
So many call North Carolina home. Living here puts you in prime adventure territory. Residents enjoy 300 miles of pristine beaches and some of the country's most beautiful old-growth hardwood forests and mountaintops. From the coasts to the mountains and everywhere in between, broadcasters in North Carolina are proud to provide high-quality, free, over-the-air programming that educates, informs, and entertains. The North Carolina Association of Broadcasters leads the nation on educating the public and businesses about the uses and values of broadcasting. Through the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters, over 300 radio and television members support our local community and our state by connecting viewers to their world. The North Carolina Association of Broadcasters Educational Foundation is proud to make tonight's debate possible as a public service to the local communities they serve.
And we are back here live with the two candidates for governor of North Carolina, Governor Pat McCrory, the Republican, and Attorney General Roy Cooper, the Democrat. Mr. Cooper, I'm going to start with you. Earlier this month, you were quoted as saying the state crime lab that you've overseen for more than a decade is, quote, providing excellent service, but the average processing time for a case is 7.5 months. This was called excellent service. Should voters be concerned about your management skills going into governor because we've got these wait times?
This is an issue about leadership, finding a problem, accepting responsibility for that problem, and solving it. When I became Attorney General, there were over 5,000 DNA rape kits sitting on local law enforcement shelves. We also had years of shoddy investigation. I ordered the independent investigation and made sure that we got rid of that backlog and worked to make sure all of our scientists were certified in the lab. And it is providing good service across our state. When you're talking about crime labs, Governor McCrory was mayor of Charlotte when they had a crime lab. And they destroyed, Governor McCrory's crime lab destroyed hundreds of DNA rape kits, many of them in open cases. And Governor McCrory did not fix the problem. When he left the mayor's office, it was still happening. And I'm sure we're going to hear him blame it on somebody else, just like he usually does.
All right. Mr. McCrory, 60 seconds.
The reason Charlotte had its own crime lab is because Attorney General Easley and Attorney General Cooper couldn't do their job. And not only does Charlotte have to have its own crime lab, now Fayetteville is going to build its own crime lab. Greensboro has its own crime lab. He says he's doing his job. If he's doing such a good job, why is Iredell County even thinking about getting its crime lab? Because they're tired of waiting on you. The governor's job is a huge job. I got one department with 16,000 employees, just one of the departments the governor's responsible for. If you can't handle the crime lab after 14 or 16 years, how are you going to handle all of state government? It's been a disaster. You talk to sheriffs, one of the reasons they say you don't supposedly have a backlog is you contracted it out. Now the contractors have backlog. If you talk to any lawyer who's driven a DWI in North Carolina and gets caught, no problem. It'll take a half a year or a year to get the blood test back. His trial attorney friends who are giving him thousands upon thousands of dollars love the crime lab just as it is.
30 seconds.
Another distortion. The Charlotte Crime Lab was started in 1969. So Governor McCrory once again is trying to blame somebody else. Crime labs are critical. We, with the North Carolina State Crime Lab, have put thousands of rapists and murderers in jail. They've also helped to clear innocent people across North Carolina. They are working hard with law enforcement every single day. And it is critical that we continue the funding because more and more evidence continues to come in.
You got 30 seconds.
I agree it's critical that we continue the funding. And frankly, as governor, I've asked for more funding. I haven't got one email from him requesting help from the crime lab. Of course, he's only done 14 emails in 16 years as Attorney General. It seems like if you really wanted to improve the crime lab, you'd talk to the governors and you'd send emails to legislative leaders and say, help me with this crime lab. You haven't done that. There are no emails saying we've got a problem. Help us fix it together.
All right.
May I respond?
Okay.
Please?
I'll give you 30 and then I'll give him 30 again.
We met with Governor McCrory's budget director and budget team every single time before the legislature. And Governor McCrory has all of a sudden become interested in the crime lab issue during these last few months. It is critical that there be resources for the state crime lab to make sure that those crimes are solved. And Governor McCrory has not been doing his job in providing those resources.
Final 30.
Actually, I'm the governor who got the resources for now, hopefully, a development of a Western lab because the western part of North Carolina has been just suffering because of the lack of productivity from your crime lab, which you've been responsible for. And by the way, before that, you were responsible for the SBI before it was transferred to the governor. The head of his SBI was a political appointee. It was basically a political hack that he hired as head of the SBI. When I took over the SBI, I put people who had actually experience in law enforcement, not making it a political organization.
All right, I'm going to stay on the issue of criminal justice reform. Mr. McCrory, this summer you signed a law saying that police are not required to release footage from their body cameras or other technology unless there is a court order. The law would have barred the Charlotte police from releasing video of Keith Lamont Scott's death, as they ended up doing last month before the law took effect. Governor, don't we need more transparency for the police?
We have several things we need to balance, Chuck. First of all, we need to balance the public interest, but we also need to balance the constitutional rights of those who are being investigated. I know CNBC and CNN and Fox would love to show the video right away. It helps your ratings. But the fact of the matter is, we've got a criminal investigation going on right now. And both the DA, the SBI, and the Charlotte Police Department, as we have with other shootings, have to go through an investigation. And let me correct you in your question. It doesn't deny the release of it. It allows a third party to make that decision because, frankly, politicians shouldn't be making that decision, whether it be a mayor or a governor or a DA. It should be an impartial judge who determines where are the constitutional rights of those being investigated that are being seen in the video versus the right of the public to know. And that's exactly what this new law does. I think it's a perfect law. We're going to see some possible gaps, but it's a vast improvement. We had no rules before. And I'm pleased that it got bipartisan support. More Democrats voted for it than anything.
Thank you, Mr. McCrory.
Thank you.
Mr. Cooper.
I'm grateful to the men and women of law enforcement who serve honorably and risk their lives every day to keep us safe. I'm also mindful that there are so many communities out there who feel targeted, and they yearn to be heard, and they yearn for respect. What we need is a governor who's going to work to make sure we have that mutual respect. And part of mutual respect is transparency. We need to make sure that the community trusts what law enforcement is doing. That is why I said there were significant problems with this law, because I believe that the records in these videotapes should be open. Clearly, there are some times when it should be kept confidential, but the presumption should be it is public, because the more transparency you have, the more mutual respect you're going to continue to develop.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. 30 seconds, Mr.
This is typical Roy Cooper. After the law is passed, he expresses concern. By the way, after a shooting, he then expresses concern in front of the FOP in an interview, which was recorded. He says he was in favor of it, trying to get the endorsement of the Federation of Police. By the way, I got that endorsement. And I'm very proud to have not only their endorsement, but the endorsement of 5 other major police organizations in North Carolina, because I care for both the victims and I also care for those persons being investigated. And to have it it needs to be taken out of politics.
Thank you, Mr. McCrory. Mr. Cooper, 30 seconds.
I have strong support from law enforcement across North Carolina. Again, Governor McCrory's story is not true. What we have to do is to make sure we earn this mutual respect. Law enforcement needs training. Law enforcement needs support and resources. Law enforcement needs to look like the communities that they protect and serve. And as governor, I'm going to be a strong law enforcement governor, but we also need to make sure that our communities are respected and that they work with law enforcement, with community policing and other ways to make sure our communities are safe.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. I got a couple of, all of these will be 30-second follows for both of you. Mr. Cooper, I'm going to start with you. In the first presidential debate, Hillary Clinton said, I think implicit bias is a problem for everyone, including police. Do you agree with her?
Well, I think that police definitely needs more training. I think all of us have biases that sometimes conflict with our jobs. We need training. We need to make sure that law enforcement has the resource that it needs. And we also need to emphasize community policing. I think when law enforcement officers work with communities, get to know communities, I think you have safer law enforcement and better law enforcement all the way around.
Okay, do you accept the idea that there's implicit bias?
I think there's bias in all of us. It's not necessarily always racial bias or other types. It might be bias of how we dress, how we look, the environment that we might be in. And those are also tools for our police officers to determine what action to take. And what we have to do, I agree with the Attorney General, we need more training for our police officers. There's never enough training. As Mayor of Charlotte for 14 years, I helped institute community policing, plus as chairman of the Public Safety Community. Community policing is vital, that our police officers get out of their cars, walk the neighborhoods, become problem solvers. And I'm a firm believer in that. But
let me go. Final 30 seconds.
But to attack the police officers the way Ms. Clinton did, and frankly our president has done in his very first year in office, was totally inappropriate.
Let me ask you both this same question, which is, what does the term Black Lives Matter mean to you? I'll start with you, Mr. Cooper. 30 seconds.
Well, I think it's a statement that is true. I think what we need to do is to make sure we continue this effort to understand that many communities of color feel targeted. They feel discriminated against. And what they want to be is heard, and what they want to be is respected. So I think there are many in law enforcement who would absolutely agree that this is something that we have to do.
Well, I personally was an admirer of Martin Luther King, who believed we should be judged by the content of our character, not by the color of our skin. And I think all lives should matter. It's our heart inside that matters, and we should value every single human life. But we do have to recognize the anger that communities have within how they interact with law enforcement. But at the same time, we've got to recognize the pressure of our police officers who every day leave their families home not knowing if they're going to come back. And the officers that were most recently involved in shootings, they had no idea that was going to happen to them that
Thank you,
day.
Mr.
But
McCrory.
their lives were also changed.
Let me move here. There's obviously a lot of national politics that is impacting this state as well. Mr. McCrory, on Friday, you released a statement condemning Donald Trump's comments about women on an Access Hollywood video in 2005. Many of your fellow Republican governors went further and withdrew their support completely from the Republican nominee. Why didn't you?
Well, let me first say, when my parents moved me to Jamestown, my family, my brothers and sisters, Jamestown, North Carolina, my first day in Mrs. Lotman's class, I didn't say yes, ma'am to the teacher. And they washed my mouth out with soap for something so minor but so important in showing respect to our teachers. Sometimes when I see the presidential candidate, Mr. Trump, he needs to have his mouth washed out with soap. And so does Mrs. Clinton, because teachers always said, don't tell a lie. And she lies, an awful lot, about the emails, about Benghazi, about other factors, and maybe she needs to look at a bar of soap next time she doesn't tell the truth. So we've got some character issues among the two presidential candidates, but I'm voting for the candidates that best represent my viewpoints now, even though I disagree with their character traits, on issues like immigration, on issues like Obamacare is a total disaster, something that the Attorney General continues to praise is Obamacare. It's a disaster if you're a middle-class individual.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper, 60.
It's hard to believe that Governor McCrory continues to support a presidential candidate who condones sexual assault, who has admitted that he has done that, who has continued to demean women. Governor McCrory, this is the first time that I've heard you even speak up at all about Donald Trump. You've gone to his rallies. You've made jokes about House Bill 2 on stage. When a Gold Star family was demeaned by Donald Trump, you didn't say anything. When women were demeaned by Donald Trump, you didn't say anything. Governor McCrory and Donald Trump are a lot alike. They both have trouble with the facts, and they both engage in divisive rhetoric. It's not good for our state, not good for our country.
30 seconds.
I don't know where that divisive rhetoric comes from. Sadly, we have to make some difficult decisions. You obviously, back when you were in your first years as Attorney General and State Senator, had to make some difficult decisions to vote for Bill Clinton. I'm sure you were uneasy about many of the things Bill Clinton did, but you had to make a choice and balance those character traits. I have to do the same thing, and it's a sad commentary that we've both had to make those decisions.
30 seconds, Mr. Cooper.
Listen, Donald Trump is bad for our country, and Governor McCrory continues to go across the state and attend his rallies and continues to support him. I think that's wrong. I would call on him today to withdraw his support from Donald Trump, considering this type of language that's so demeaning to women and actually says that he has committed crimes. Governor McCrory still supports him. That's wrong.
I got a quick 30-second follow, Mr. Cooper. As you know, majority of North Carolinians do not think Hillary Clinton is honest and trustworthy. Do you?
I think she is much more trustworthy than Donald Trump, and I believe that the Secretary will help to keep our country more safe and more secure, and she certainly is not going to be a dangerous president like Donald Trump, who Governor McCrory supports.
In 30 seconds on this, on Donald Trump. Is he a role model for kids?
Not as vulgar, verbal outburst. I don't like the personal attacks. I hate it.
Any part of him make him a role model?
I think what makes him a role model is where he does stand strong on certain issues that need to be said, especially from outside Washington, D.C. The Syrian refugee situation is a disaster. I personally talked to the FBI, one of the top leaders of the FBI, and they kind of laughed when they said they're checking the backgrounds of the Syrian refugees. No, they aren't. There's no embassy to check. There's no qualification. So when Hillary Clinton says they're doing a venting process of these Syrian refugees come into our state, the FBI is not even being told where they are.
Thank you, Mr. McCrory. I'm going to move to health care. Mr. Cooper, I'll start with you. 60 seconds to both of you. As you know, former President Bill Clinton recently referred to the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, as the craziest thing in the world. And one of the reasons he was pointing out is this issue with the exchanges. And here in North Carolina, there's only one major insurer offering. Is Obamacare broken?
Well, that's the reason. The reason that there's only one insurer on the exchange is because Governor McCrory and the legislative leadership have fought having a state exchange here in North Carolina where more people can get health insurance. They've also withdrawn money that could help educate people and could help encourage more insurance companies to become competitive. The worst thing that Governor McCrory and the legislative leadership have done, they have refused to accept the billions of dollars, billions with a B, that we've already paid to Washington that could come back to North Carolina and expand Medicaid to hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians. And here we are again, Governor McCrory putting the social issues ahead of the best interest of our state. Governor Chris Christie, Governor John Kasich in Ohio, even Governor Mike Pence, who's on the ticket with Donald Trump, they all saw that expansion of Medicaid in their state, even if they disagreed with the policy, helped to create tens of thousands of good-paying health jobs, help private insurers, and Governor McCrory's continued to say no.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Mr. McCrory, 60 seconds.
The blame game is coming. I've never been blamed for Obamacare. This is a first. I had nothing to do with the legislation. I did try to get you to fight the legislation representing the state of North Carolina, along with many other states, and you as Attorney General refused to fight Obamacare because you thought it would be fantastic for the United States of America. It's been a total failure. If you talk to any middle-class business person right now, you're seeing, if you talk to any family right now, you've had a nice setup with health insurance for the state of North Carolina for 26 years. Your own state plan, it's free. You talk to someone with Obamacare, my gosh, you ought to get on Obamacare right now. It'll cost you $20,000 to $30,000 a year. You've gotten too used to the government health insurance that you're now guaranteed until you're 65. If you feel so good about Obamacare, get on it and get off the state plan that we have right now.
30 seconds, Mr. Cooper.
It is incredible to me that with this policy already set at the federal level, that the governor cannot accept the billions in tax money we've already paid. This is our tax money that could come back to North Carolina and insure hundreds of thousands of people and take pressure off the small businesses, take pressure off private employers who see a benefit. The other states who have done this have seen a benefit in their insurance premiums. But Governor McCrory's got to put that ideology. He's got to continue to talk about it.
Thank you.
Admit it's a failure. It's okay to admit it's a failure. That's okay. And by the way, I do agree in some aspect that in Medicaid, Dr. Voss is in the audience, and we're expanding Medicaid services for Alzheimer's patients, those people that can't help themselves. And those are the people I want to emphasize right now, is helping those who can't help themselves. And I've personally met with President Obama in the White House, in the Oval Office, and encouraged him to work with us to allow us to have a North Carolina plan, not a Washington, D.C. plan, which you want. And it's extremely sad right now that Blue Cross and Blue Shield is the only
your time is up, and
insurance company.
Give you 30.
We can make a North Carolina plan. We can expand Medicaid in a North Carolina way. That opportunity is there. And for him to talk about saying that you're not giving health insurance to people who need it, this is the perfect opportunity with the tax money that we've already paid. But he continues to say no because of ideological
Apparently
reasons.
you're not going to get on Obamacare, and you're going to keep your government plan that you've enjoyed for 26 years in the state of North Carolina.
But very quickly, answer the Medicaid question. Why won't you expand it?
Because right now we don't know what the cost of 10% will be to the taxpayers of North Carolina, and I think it's irresponsible to enter into something not knowing the cost. And right now, a Wall Street Journal article just in the past 6 weeks are showing all those states that he's mentioned, their costs are much greater than ever anticipated. I had to inherit a $525 million misforecast on Medicaid spending from the Purdue administration, and we had to fix that.
All right,
this is the nightmare that we inherited.
I want to get one more topic in here before I think we got an idea where you stand on expanding Medicaid, the two of you on this one. But I want to go quickly to voter ID, and if you can keep your answers quickly. Mr. McCrory, a federal court in August said the voter ID law that you signed in 2013 targeted, quote, African Americans with almost surgical precision. Obviously, it's been thrown out, but do you regret signing the bill?
Absolutely not. In fact, one thing I'd like to compliment the Attorney General on is one thing he did years ago was regarding Sudafed, because we were having we both agree on this issue of drug addiction. And he passed a law requiring ID when you get a Sudafed. If ID is good enough for Sudafed, I think it's good enough for the people of North Carolina to vote, because anyone who thinks with tens of millions of dollars on the ground, as you know, Chuck, in North Carolina, if you don't think there's potential for voter fraud, you're digging your head in the sand. Because as you know, in the history of the United States, in Chicago, in West Virginia, in Texas, voter fraud occurs, and we need to do everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen. And if you don't look for it, you're not going to find it.
60 seconds, and this is it. So go ahead.
The governor knows that this legislation was much broader than a voter ID law, although this was the strictest in the country. It had to do with early voting, the ease of early voting. It had to do with the ease of registration. When the three-judge panel in the Fourth Circuit said that this law intentionally discriminates against minorities and students, it was time to stop. But Governor McCrory continues to use taxpayer money to pay for attorneys to continue to appeal this. Of course, he lost. It's shameful for the governor to keep pushing this legislation. It's wrong for our state.
Excuse me.
All right, I got it. We got time. You're both going to get more time here in a minute for your own closing statements, because that concludes all of my questions. I have more, I promise you.
Excellent
if they give
job.
us more time, we do it. You both get 90 seconds for your closing statement. Mr. Cooper, by virtue of a coin toss, you go first, and then Mr. McCrory.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you to the broadcasters. Thank you, Governor McCrory, for joining me. Thank you, Kristen, my wife Kristen, and family who are here today. Thanks to all of you for watching this debate at home. Let's all remember to keep working to help the flood victims. Even though we disagree tonight on a lot of things, we agree that we got to pull together to help them. Some of them are in Nash County, where I grew up. And I've always been proud to call North Carolina home, and I still am. But over the last few years, some things have changed that we've heard about during this debate. For decades, you could travel across this country and tell people you were from North Carolina, and the questions would be about our great universities, or our technology, or our mountains, or our beaches. Now the question is, what in the world is going on in North Carolina? Well, we can fix that. But the first thing we got to do is recognize the problems that we face. We have to make education a priority. 41st in the nation is not good enough. We need to get to at least the national average. And we need a good jobs governor, a governor who will work to bring better paying jobs to our state instead of driving them away with discriminatory laws like House Bill 2. And we need a governor who is going to work to restore North Carolina's great reputation. And I plan to do that. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you. I concur that our prayers are with everyone tonight. I'm going right back to the Emergency Operations Center to work with Mike and our other team members, and our prayers are with people tonight, especially in Kinston and Rocky Mount, in Greenville, up and down the Tar River. This is going to be a tough next 72 hours. I would like to thank Roy Cooper for running for governor. It takes courage for the family to do this. I know with my family and my wife, it's an extremely hard thing to do. Only a politician like Roy Cooper, however, would consider record job increases, record tax increases, record job creation and record teacher pay raises as a failure. This is leadership like we've never seen in 3.5 years. And it's leadership we need to continue in North Carolina. We cannot go back to the leadership of Easley and Purdue and Cooper. Let's continue this great progress forward because we do live in the best state in the United States of America.
I want to thank you both for a very civil debate, by the way. It was wonderful. It's now up to the voters, and it is up to you. So don't forget to vote. This public service program was brought to you by the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters Educational Foundation. I thank them for the privilege of moderating this debate. I'm Chuck Todd from NBC News. Thank you for watching.